BYD just outsold Tesla globally. Their cheapest car costs $1 and that same $1 car now comes standard with more driver assistance tech than a fully loaded F-150. Free, every model, every trim, no upcharge. A company most Americans still can't name is already deciding what you pay for your next car. Here's exactly how they did it. Here's what almost every headline about BYD gets wrong from the very first sentence. BYD is not, at its core, a car company. It never was. Build your dreams. That's what the name means. Was founded in 1995 in Shen by a chemist named Wang Chuanfu. Initial capital, $300,000. First product, rechargeable batteries. Not sedans, not SUVs. Batteries for consumer electronics. Reverse engineered from Japanese technology and manufactured at a cost that Japanese competitors couldn't touch. By 2000, BYD was the world's largest producer of nickel-cadmium batteries. By 2002, they had claimed the top position in lithium-ion supply globally. They weren't thinking about cars yet. They were quietly mastering the one technology that would eventually define what cars become. The automotive chapter opened in 2003 when BYD acquired Sichuan Automobile, a struggling Chinese manufacturer. The move looked opportunistic at the time. In retrospect, it was surgical. A battery company buying a car company isn't a pivot, it's a setup. In 2008, Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway took a 10% stake for $232 million. The financial press called it unusual. Analysts called it a curiosity. By 2021, that stake had grown to over $8 billion. One of the most quietly brilliant bets in the history of industrial investment, placed on a Chinese battery manufacturer that most Western analysts hadn't modeled seriously. That backstory matters because it explains everything that comes after. BYD didn't enter the EV era scrambling to retrofit a combustion-era company. They were already inside the technology that makes EVs possible. The car business was the application. The battery business was the foundation. There's a concept in business strategy called a moat, the structural advantage that protects a company from competition. BYD's moat isn't a single product or a single patent. It's the depth of what they control end-to-end. The battery, the electric motor, the semiconductor chips, the steel, the glass, the seat foam. BYD manufactures or controls the supply of nearly every major component in their vehicles. The term for this is vertical integration, and in the automotive world, no company does it more completely. When the global semiconductor shortage hit in 2021, Ford was calling suppliers in Taiwan and being told to wait 6 months. Production lines went idle. Billions in revenue evaporated. BYD called their own subsidiary. Their production barely flinched. That's not luck. That's a structural architecture that took 15 years and enormous capital to build, and another 15 years for any competitor to meaningfully replicate. Running straight through that vertical stack is BYD's most important technological achievement, the Blade battery, developed internally and launched in 2020. To understand why it matters, you need to understand what it replaced. Conventional lithium-ion battery packs are layered systems, cylindrical or prismatic cells, packed into modules, assembled into packs. Each layer adds weight, complexity, cost, and failure point. It's an architecture that made sense when battery technology was immature and engineers needed buffers between components for safety. The Blade eliminates the module layer entirely. Individual cells, long, flat, blade-shaped, stack directly into the structural pack. It sounds almost too simple. The result is a 50% improvement in space efficiency, meaningful reduction in manufacturing complexity, and dramatically better thermal management. And then there's the nail penetration test. In battery safety validation, this is the benchmark that matters most. Driving a steel nail through a fully charged cell and measuring what happens. Thermal runaway, fire, explosion. Early lithium-ion packs, including cells used in Tesla's early vehicles, failed this test in ways that were genuinely alarming. The Blade passed, no fire, controlled heat dissipation. A safety profile that changed the conversation overnight. BYD didn't license the Blade battery outward. They kept it proprietary, scaled it across every vehicle they produce, from the $10 Xeron Seagull to the ultra-premium Yangwang brand, and built a cost and safety advantage that competitors are still actively trying to reverse engineer. That technology was locked in by 2018. The industry is still catching up in 2025. One honest caveat belongs here. China's government designated AVs a strategic national industry in 2008, which meant subsidies, preferential financing, and guaranteed domestic market access for companies like BYD during their development years. Critics, particularly in Washington, argue BYD's cost structure is artificially supported. That argument has partial merit. But BYD has now posted consecutive years of profitability without heavy subsidy dependence and independent teardown analyses, most notably from UBS in 2023, confirmed that their manufacturing efficiency is genuinely world-class by any objective measure. The government support helped BYD survive. The engineering made survival worth something. Numbers have a way of making abstract competitive threats feel real. So let's put the actual figures on the table. In 2024, BYD sold 1.76 million fully electric vehicles and 3.4 million total vehicles including plug-in hybrids. That total represents a 48% increase over 2023. Revenue reached $107 billion, up 20% year-over-year. Net profit, $5.6 billion. For comparison, Ford's total global revenue in 2024 was approximately $105 billion. But their EV division alone lost $5 billion. GM's EV operations burned through an estimated $2.5 billion after accounting for factory retooling. BYD generated $5.6 billion in net profit while growing at 41% annually. These are trajectories moving in opposite directions, and the gap is widening. In January 2025, BYD launched two flagship models, the Han L and Tang L, and simultaneously announced that God's Eye, their advanced driver assistance system, would be standard equipment across their entire lineup, every model, every trim, no additional charge. God's Eye includes full-speed adaptive cruise control, lane centering, automated parking, and highway assist, the features that Mercedes, BMW, and Tesla price between $10,000 and $10,000 as optional packages. Standard on a $1,000,000 car. Elon Musk's response on X, impressive. When the CEO of Tesla publicly compliments a direct competitor's technology announcement, the industry takes notice. In Q1 2025, BYD sold Bonmersaungen fully electric vehicles, a 59% year-over-year increase. The entire United States EV market sold approximately 9 units that same quarter. One company, one quarter. More EVs than every Tesla, every Ford Mustang Mach-E, every Chevy Blazer EV, every Rivian, every Lucid, every Hyundai and Kia combined, sold anywhere in America. Then in March 2025 came the Super E platform announcement. BYD unveiled charging technology capable of delivering 400 kilometers of range, roughly 250 miles in 5 minutes. The system operates at 9 volts and 9 amps. The Han L hits 60 miles per hour in 2.9 seconds on this architecture. BYD committed to Bongan dedicated ultra-fast charging stations across China by end of 2025. The entire United States currently has approximately 900 Tesla supercharger stalls total. For the whole country, all models, all users. The UBS teardown analysis concluded BYD's manufacturing cost per vehicle runs 35% below Volkswagen's comparable models. On a car that already sells for $10,000, the math does not work for Western automakers, and the executives running those companies are fully aware of it. BYD does not currently sell passenger cars in the United States. The Biden administration imposed 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs in 2024. The Trump administration reinforced and expanded those tariffs through 2025. The wall is real. But walls have limits, and BYD is playing a longer game than tariff policy allows for. They sell in over 70 countries. In Europe, 120,000 vehicles moved in 2024, small in absolute terms, but growing fast enough to force Volkswagen into emergency strategy sessions and factory closures in Germany, the first in the company's history. The EU imposed additional tariffs of up to 35% on Chinese EVs in late 2024. BYD's response was to break ground on a manufacturing facility in Hungary, producing locally to sidestep the tariff structure entirely. In Australia, the BYD Atto 3 became one of the fastest-selling EVs in the country's history. In Southeast Asia, Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, BYD holds dominant market position. In Brazil, they're building a factory on the former site of a shuttered Ford plant. The symbolism is not subtle. In Mexico, BYD is constructing an assembly facility that raises the real possibility of qualifying under USMCA trade rules and entering the US market through regional manufacturing. Even without a single BD on American lots, The competitive pressure is already reshaping what American buyers pay. Tesla's Model 3 dropped from $46,000 in 2023 to $38,990 today. Ford cut the Mustang Mach-E's price by $8,000 in 2023. GM launched the Equinox EV at $35,000 specifically to hit a price floor that Chinese competition was making impossible to ignore. Every one of those reductions puts money back in buyers' pockets, driven substantially by a company most of those buyers have never purchased from. BYD also holds joint ventures with Toyota, producing EVs under a shared brand in China. They work with Stellantis on platform development. They supply battery technology to Ford and others. The company Americans are tariffed out of buying from is already embedded in the supply chains of vehicles Americans drive daily. The separation between BYD and the American auto industry is far blurrier than the tariff wall suggests. The American auto industry built its identity around combustion, V8s, truck culture, the sound and feeling of an engine as part of what a car fundamentally is. That identity is real and deeply embedded. It isn't disappearing, but the infrastructure underneath that identity, the factory systems, supplier networks, and decades of engineering investment, was calibrated entirely for one type of powertrain. Pivoting to batteries is genuinely hard, genuinely expensive, and genuinely slow. GM committed $35 billion to EV development through 2025 and still cannot match BYD's cost structure. Ford's EV division lost $5 billion in a single year. BYD didn't pivot. Batteries are their native environment, not an adaptation. That's a compounding advantage measured in decades, and money alone does not close it on a short timeline. Wang Chuanfu said in 2024 that BYD's goal is not to be the biggest car company in China. It's to be the biggest car company in the world. 5 years ago, that read as ambition. Today, it reads as a schedule. The tariff wall is buying American automakers time. The question that actually matters is what they do with it. Whether they use this window to genuinely close the technology and cost gap, or whether they use it to delay the reckoning. Because tariff walls don't last forever. Trade relationships shift. Factories get built on the right side of borders. Political priorities change. What happens in the next 10 years will determine whether the American auto industry is competitive in 2035, or whether it becomes the American television industry of the 1980s. Technologically outpaced, tariff-protected for a few years, then gone within a decade. The story is just starting, and for the first time in a long time, the most interesting engineering in the automobile industry isn't coming from Detroit.